If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then visit the BetAngel Academy, where you have detailed, structured Betfair trading courses. Or why not visit our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel Professional, but also visit the forum where you can get detailed images, examples, and downloadable files. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon if you want notification of new videos as they're released. So I thought I'd do this quick video to talk about a graph that you may have seen me post sometimes on the forum and on social media, and it's related to the chance of a favourite winning a horse race against its implied chance. So what do we mean by the implied odds? So if you look at odds when you're actively trading or betting on a particular market, what you're looking at is the market's estimate of the chance that that selection has of going on to win. So for example, if we see something priced at decimal odds of 4, you just do 1 divided by 4 equals 0.25, which equals 25% chance of that particular horse going on to win. Or if you don't like percentages, what you're saying is if this race was run 4 times, then this horse would win at least once. So that's how you would look at the odds, and something priced at 10 would be 1 divided by 10 equals 0.1. It would have a 10% chance of winning. 1 in 10 times this horse would go on to win the race. And then if you look at shorter odds, if you look at odds of 2, you do 1 divided by 2 equals 0.5. This horse has a 50% chance of winning this race. Or you would basically be saying that it's going to win 1 in 2 times, effectively. So when you're looking at the odds, that is what you're looking at. You're looking at the percentage chance of something going on to win that particular race, that particular football match, a tennis match, whatever. The odds represent the estimate that the market has of the probability of the chance of that selection going on to win that particular event. So, what's the point of doing that? Well, in some sense, if you look at my video, How to Win on Betting, what you'll find is that we actually can make an estimate and look for value by understanding if we think that our model, our process, our selection method is better than those particular odds. You can then sort of say, well, I think those odds are good value, so I'm going to back it, or you think that those odds are bad value, so you're going to lay it. So that's one way that you can use that. But if you do that, then one of the things that you need to understand is, were you just lucky? So, it's quite possible that you can sort of say, I think that the chance of this is much higher than the market is expecting, so I'm going to back it. Or you sort of think the market's got it totally wrong, the odds are way too short, and I'm going to lay it. And you do that, and then suddenly you're up many, many thousands over a period of time. So one of the things that I measure in every market, whether it's a trading position that I've taken or a betting position, any position I take in any market, I get BetAngel to export all of the data around that market, but I also look at how often that thing occurred, just through like its natural progression. So over the very, very, very long period of time, what you would expect is that the odds would more or less match the percentage chance of that event occurring. That's typically what happens. So, you need to first of all measure that the market is generally doing that there's no particular bias that's occurring in the market that's distorting that value. And generally speaking, that's what you tend to find. The longer you look at the results from a market, the more and more it gravitates to its implied chance. The odds are correct, basically. You're looking at the market, you're looking at the odds, and that's a fair approximation of the chance that that selection has of going on to win. So, that's what you tend to find over the long term. However, over the short term, what you tend to find is that the prices and activity within the market could be favourable for a period of time and then unfavourable. And it's just chance that that is occurring. Because even if you toss a coin 600 times, it could be possible that you end up, if you're betting on heads, at the end of 600. But it's much less likely because by then it would have gravitated to 50-50 between heads and tails. But over much shorter periods of time, you see wild fluctuations up and down. So that's what I'm measuring when I'm looking at some of those stats and why I post that information. I think sometimes people misinterpret it as me saying, do this because it's profitable. But no, what I'm saying is if you're doing a strategy and you're profiting, then it could have just been down to luck. or if you're doing a strategy and you're making horrendous losses, then it could be just down to luck. So it's important to measure it. You have to measure it to know which side of it you're on. Because ultimately, over the long term, the only way that you'll make money is if you beat what's going on within the market. So if the market is particularly favorable, has a particularly favorable set of results, and you're underperforming that, but you're still making money, you may think that you're a genius and that you've got it totally sussed, when in fact all that happened was the market just happened to tip in your favor. However, if the market is very favorable at some particular moment in time and you've done even better than that, then you're probably on to something. But also think about it. If the market's incredibly favorable and you've lost money, then when the market turns, you're going to lose a lot more. So that's what I'm tending to measure with those graphs and that data. And I meticulously pore over this constantly in loads of different types of markets to understand what the underlying attributes are. So let's bring up the graph that I have been posting regularly so you can understand exactly what's going on within there. So the graph runs from left to right, and this is the number of horse races that the graph represents. I'm probably going to simplify this as the numbers get bigger, simply because it becomes unreadable after a certain period of time. But basically, running from left to right, you've actually got each individual race within that mix. And then what I'm doing is I'm looking at the odds within that race, who actually won the race, and then I'm putting that into a number. And that number is representing the variation of the odds that were available against how many horses actually won on that particular race. So if you look at the grey line that runs sort of roughly along the middle, you'll see that sometimes that's above the line, sometimes it's below, but over the very, very long term you can see that that's almost at zero on the y-axis. The vertical axis. So basically what you're looking at there is that's the percentage difference between how often horses won against how often they should have won according to their odds. So you can see that that grey line basically over time hunts towards zero. So that's basically saying the market is absolutely perfectly efficient in aggregate over the very long term, which is more or less what you'd expect. But then if you look at these other two lines that you have on the graph, then what you'll notice is there's quite wide variations. So if we look at the blue line is representing the last 100 races. So you can sort of see that moves around a fair bit. So sometimes if you're backing the favourite, if you go above that zero line, then that basically indicates that a backing strategy would have outperformed. So if you were backing favourites and you had some sort of selection criteria, or perhaps somebody was giving you a selection criteria on which to back a favourite, when it goes above that blue line, it's basically saying that you would have made money, but you would have made money by default. So no selection process or skill would have allowed you to make money over that period. The market was just very favourable. So when you see that blue line above zero, that's basically saying backing worked really well, regardless of any selection process. And if it goes below that line, it's basically saying that laying would have worked particularly well because backing wouldn't have worked. It was a negative return overall. And then I've also plotted the 250 race moving average as well. And you can see that this goes over quite long periods of time, flipping between being very favourable for backing strategies and being very favourable for laying strategies. And that gives you a clue as to whether you're outperforming over a period of time or not. I tend to move the moving average, excuse the duplication of words there, but I tend to move the frequency of the moving average according to the time of the season, because in the summer there are many, many more races. So what I'm trying to capture is the very short term, and then typically sort of around a week of racing using those moving averages. But the idea is that if I've got a strategy that's backing or laying, or is relying upon certain characteristics within the market. So say, for example, dobbing. If you're dobbing or you're doing a back to lay or a lay to back, I've got that data as well that will tell me if something was particularly favourable at some particular moment in time. And you can cut it in any number of ways. But typically what this chart is trying to show you is if you had a strategy that involved backing or laying the favourite on this particular chart, would it have been favourable just by default? Omitting skill, selection criteria, any of those things, what would have happened at that particular moment in time? And it's a sensible thing to do, because you're not measuring yourself accurately if you just say, I was profitable and therefore I have a really great strategy. You have to match it against the underlying characteristics within the market, because otherwise you will get fooled into adopting a strategy, a process, a system that just happens to be profitable at the exact moment at which you were using it, regardless of any of the selection criteria or anything else that you would have done. You could have just turned up, backed, and you would have made money. So when you look at the sort of data that I'm collecting here and the way that I'm displaying it, that's what I'm looking at. I'm basically saying, was the market favourable for a certain strategy at this moment in time? Did I outperform it? Because obviously if you have a backing strategy and the market was significantly negative, in other words, laying strategies would have worked, and you still profited, then you've really got something special there. But typically that's not what happens. Typically what happens is when the market turns against you, you end up in a situation where you think that perhaps the system isn't working and you bail it. But in fact, what I'm interested in is how it performs over the very, very long term. So riding out those ups and downs within the market, whether you're trading or betting, is one of the most important things to do. And the way to be able to look through that and understand if you are outperforming is to actually bring up a graph like the one that we've got here and measure what's going on within the underlying market. Because if you're outperforming that, you have a very profitable strategy.